Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Canada's podcast. My name is Rivers Corbett. I am your Atlantic Canadian host and just bringing you entrepreneurs from coast to coast to coast in the Atlantic Canada region. And today, really pleased and honored to have Rob Boynes as my guest. Rob is the co-founder of Humans. And we're going to talk a bit about the spelling of humans as part of this conversation today. Canada's first modern accounting and bookkeeping company aimed entirely at small businesses. Built by the people behind WagePoint, Humans, it's HUUMANS.com, is focused on helping to make running a successful business as accessible to as many people as possible through the democratization of data and knowledge. A recent resident of Nova Scotia, welcome, Rob. Rob's career has been based predominantly in product-first, early-stage technology startups throughout Europe and the U.S., with an earlier foundation in media, broadcast, and brand. So welcome, Rob, to Canada's podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, great. Let's just kind of dive in first with the typical, the aha moments, I call them. When you started Humans, well, first of all, give us your view of what Humans is about, and then what I want to know is what made you want to get into starting Humans. What was the aha moment that you said, I got to get into this and solve this problem?
I gotta say, man, the one thing I never imagined I would do would be starting a bookkeeping company. So there's that as the top line headline. My background has always been solving problems, and so I've worked in transit startups, I've worked in ticket sales startups. These aren't things that kind of necessarily, when you start out in your career, you think, well, that's where I'm going to end up. But the problem is interesting, and so Humans is interesting because it's trying to solve a problem with an industry that's, pretty unmoved. Like, it hasn't really developed very much. It's not really appealing to people who are running modern businesses, e-commerce businesses, in an environment where data is moving in real time and markets are crashing and burning 24 hours, in 24-hour cycles. You can't really be in a position as a business owner now to rely on annual tax returns as a way of an indication for your business or how it's progressing.
Right.
And so humans kind of raised that problem when we started discussing it. Obviously, working with Bill and Richard from WagePoint, they had a very clear understanding coming from the small business environment about the needs of how the incumbent parts of the small business ecosystem pretty much haven't really developed very much, and they were very disruptive in payroll for small business. They came into that market and they made it transparent and they made it simple, and they made it accessible. And so when we started looking at projects that we could sort of tackle and problems that we could kind of solve, we'd all come effectively from a small business background, but from very diverse backgrounds.
Right.
And one of our big issues was as well, it's really difficult for a business owner to work out what the truth is in their business. Like, it's very, very difficult. And to get advisory or advice or just even the knowledge of how to move things forward is, incredibly difficult. If you're the majority of people who start a small business are not business people. Like, they didn't go off and do an MBA. They didn't come from the mindset of like, oh, I'm going to work out all the ways that I can create a small business. And then they go to do their MBA and they're like, you know what? The profit margins in cardboard boxes are insane. I'm going to start a cardboard box business. And they go off and do that. People don't do that. They start a restaurant. They start a retail business. These are businesses which are notoriously difficult to do. They go off and start a landscaping business. They go off and turn a hobby into a passion into a business.
Right.
And those people have no business support. They realize that it's usually too late that they need an accountant or a bookkeeper. They need to really understand how tax works. They need to know how to employ somebody, how that works. It's incredibly difficult. And if they want to grow or expand their business, they have to go into their bank, inevitably, or broker, and talk business about how they're going to progress their business forward. And those conversations are not natural to them. So we wanted to create a company that was that was focused on supporting that owner, which is the majority use case, I guess, in small business, to support those people in how they could become successful and build successful businesses. And we know statistically that around half of businesses, small business fails in the first 4 years.
Yep.
Typically, that's usually due to a combination of factors. So there's factors that we can help with, and there's factors we can't. If you have a product in the market and the market doesn't fit the product, then you either pivot and change.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that also comes with understanding how do you work out the key indicators that you haven't got product market fit, right?
Right.
So the other major fail factors primarily though is cash, and cash seems incredibly simplistic. For a lot of business founders, that's checking their bank account, but that's not what cash is. That shows maybe what your free cash, as we call it, would be, but it doesn't show your liabilities. It doesn't show how much money you owe at the end of the month, how much money's churning out of payroll, how much is moving at any one time, how much of that is affected by localized rates or federal rates. So sometimes the money that's in your bank account is actually not the money that you're actually able to spend.
Sure.
And that causes major issues for small business. And it's magnified in small business, because if you're a small business owner, you maybe get one mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if your business fails or you miss payroll, really hard to come back from that. And that's one of the things that we talk about accessibility. That, if you are a serial founder and you have cash reserves and you've done it before, the business is very accessible to you. If maybe your father is a CEO of a business or an accountant or whatever, business is more accessible to you. If you are a female founder or a person of color, or you come from a minority group, it's actually harder. It's not as accessible to you because it's not culturally, it's not as culturally acceptable or culturally accessible to access what good business is, and also how to be successful. And the chances of you failing are going to be higher because you don't have that safety net that's behind you. So humans is really there when we talk about democratization. It's the data is already in your business and those numbers are already in your business, but you don't know how to interpret them and you probably don't have access to them. And we have built an ecosystem, a product, a company around those kind of core tenets, and said, you know what, let's be transparent about it. We're transparent about how we run. You're transparent about your business, and we can provide you with an environment to sort of move towards success.
So who came to who? Was it WagePoint came to you, or you went to WagePoint? Did they have they been involved since the very beginning?
Yeah, well, Bill and Richard both exited WagePoint. They both exited their sort of position in WagePoint. Both, I think, with an aspect to try and slow down their lives a little. I think Bill was quite keen to have an experiment with what retirement might look like. I think that lasted about 3 weeks. And these are serial entrepreneurs, and those these names, I think, in the Canadian ecosystem are kind of known. They started to come about looking at new problems in the space that they just kind of exited. That weren't directly obviously related to the payroll part. They had some itches that they wanted to scratch.
Right.
I was introduced to them through the sort of Atlantic startup community. So we started playing with some ideas and started talking, and then it sort of snowballs, as these things often do, until the point whereby you're drawing up cap tables and raising money, and then it becomes very serious indeed. But it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, that's so cool. So talk to me about the first 6 months of your business. This is an entrepreneur's show, entrepreneur's conversation. Talk about that first 6 months of Humans. And first of all, I do want to get this question asked before I forget. You spell Humans HUUMANS. Now, that's a branding. I'll just say dog's breakfast when you start off, because the word humans is not typically spelled that way. Can you talk about your rationale for that, and how you have dealt with that very close version of humans, but if they don't spell it right, they go someplace else on the web?
You'd think that weirdly, it's actually a pretty good SEO target.
Okay.
Most people who are searching for sort of bookkeeping, or they're searching for our name specifically, would usually go like, well, humans bookkeeping, humans whatever, and it will still show up if you type in humans. And So you can always navigate around that. I mean, I've been working in startups since that whole day when we started dropping vowels and consonants just to try and make the URLs work.
Yes.
And you have to become more of a destination for sure, but
Sure.
modern SEO kind of allows you to get around a lot of that as long as you're pretty smart by
Right.
doing that. And
got it.
I recommend anybody who wants to do sort of digital lead gen. Even if sometimes it's worse if you have a name that's more instantly recognizable. If it was humans, we'd be dealing with a whole other problem. To really just start talking to really good lead gen operators who know what they do. They're not incredibly expensive. They're usually on your side. They're incredibly intelligent. Modern lead gen is a scientific art, and I highly recommend anybody in the first 6 months who's considering that to be one of their major funnels to seek someone out to support them.
Cool. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about your first 6 months. What transpired? What was your strategy for the first 6 months? How'd you make out with it?
The first 6 months of humans, it's difficult to kind of remember that far back because it's one of these things. Once you kind of get past year one, it all sort of starts to snowball. There was a lot of discussions really about trying to find the problem space. We're kind of unusual. I guess none of us are first timers. This is not like first rodeo stop. We've all been in overheated incubators, and we've all sort of dealt with the dash for cash that happened sort of in the mid 2000s, and all of us have worked right through the kind of Series DE. So we were very much in the position of we kind of wanted to have some fun. I know that sounds ridiculous because most people when they start a startup are like, well, we have to hit the ground running, we have to hit profit. We have to sort of start making revenue. We got to get our ARR in line. We got to do all that sort of stuff. But there's a sense that I certainly learned coming into this, and this is one of the first times I've kind of in my career where I've got myself to the level of confidence where I can quite happily come into a day one startup and really be impactful is probably not the right word because I guess I've always done that, but take a lot of the lead on stuff. It's taken me probably until I was in my late 30s to get to that stage, rather than just being the supporting act. It's the ability to kind of slow down, to be honest. So the first 6 months were us trying not to spend money on things until we'd really done our thought research and played with the ideas of what it could be. When we started Humans, it wasn't actually designed as a bookkeeping company. We came at it from the point of view of coming at it from SaaS, and how could we expose business's data. So we started working pretty quickly. I was working with some ex colleagues of mine that from the UK tech scene, and we were coming up with ways of using bank accounts through a conduit called Plaid, which allows you, or Plaid, however you want to pronounce it. It allows you to take people's bank feeds or test bank feeds, and you can plug it into products. And if you've ever run a budgeting app or anything like that, you probably connected your bank account. You would have used Plaid.
Right. Okay.
So we started mocking up stuff around with that, working out what we could actually do with the concept of cash. And we pretty quickly realized that it wasn't really solving anyone's problems. It was nice, it was fun, it was cool, but it wasn't really solving anyone's problems. So we had to go back to really what the core requirements were for SMB, not to get too distracted, and realized, well, maybe we have to start looking into the bookkeeping and accounting space, which is good. I mean, both of my co-founders are CPA designated, so they understood that. But
right.
And then it was a very boring 2 months of me trying to figure out how CPAs operate. And someone from a design and UX and sort of product background who's used to, working at places like NTB and Viacom, sitting down and trying to work out how CPA kind of does its job and how they do charts of accounts was
and you got through it in 2 months. That's pretty good. That's pretty fast.
Well, you see, the great technique is learning what you need to learn and not trying to master the space.
Right. Good story.
And I guess that kind of goes for anyone who's starting a business. Is like there's so much that you can try to master, but you can't master it all because you still have to be true to what your skill set is. And I think it's identifying what your skill set is as soon as quickly as you can. And if you can, I mean, it's a luxury to say that you can delegate it to other people because there's other co-founders around you. For a lot of small business owners, there's just you and you everything. but just get enough depth of knowledge where you feel comfortable, but don't feel as if you have to master everything, because it's impossible, and you'll end up down side tracks and side routes. As soon as you get to the point where you can delegate something, do it, because um, I'm always quite happy to be the most stupid person in the room. That's usually my goal. If I go into any company, or if I'm being involved in a merger acquisition and I walk into that room for the first time and this is the company that we're purchasing or whatever, I want to make sure I'm the stupidest person in that room. That's when I feel my best. That's when I feel my strongest.
So you spent that first 6 months doing just sitting down and doing research, getting a sense of your surroundings, getting a sense of what were the realities, et cetera, et cetera. Is that fair to say? And the reason I ask that is you get a lot of entrepreneurs that hit the road running and do their due diligence. And so what I'm hearing is you were doing further due diligence that first 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there was a certain geographical and political climate around that. We started during probably the worst year of COVID, so there was a sense whereby we weren't able to all get in a room or go to dinner or do any of those sort of things. Geographically, we're split between Halifax and Alberta as well, like Bill being in Alberta. So there was never that reality of like, let's just do this and get all excited in a room and just start like plowing effort into things. Like, we had to schedule stuff and we had to have time to think and we had to kind of strategize. One of the things that I've always found was really useful, and I've done it in several startups before, is to generate memos and circulate those memos around the people who matter. And it's a good way of focusing. It goes back to that Amazon managerial piece, which is that if you want to create a new product, you write the press release first and you work backwards from the press release. And I think that's kind of almost a cliche now in product, but I kind of see that being a memo piece. This idea that if I have something which I'm thinking about and I'm working on it and I'm trying to work out how it fits together and I'm not sure, if I try to communicate it with one of my colleagues over Slack or via a Zoom call, I'm just going to ramble on and I'm not really going to get to the point of the matter. The process of writing it down into 500 words and coming back to it the next morning and looking at it and going, well, this is genius, or there's a huge hole in this logic and fixing it. And then distributing that for other people to read, consider, reread, consider, and then come back with questions. It kind of slows down the process a little. So we did a lot of memo writing, or kind of, I guess, press release writing when we started, to try and really figure out, what problem are we solving here, and what's the USP, and how are we. I always feel like if you can't tell the narrative internally very well, you've got no chance telling it externally.
Yeah, totally.
And it's a total waste then to sort of go to a PR and be like, hey, so we got this cool thing and it's going to take me 2 hours to explain what it is. And it's contradictory. You have to kind of get your ducks in a row. And that once you start scaling your business and once you start bringing in other people who are experts, like we recently hired our CRO, for example, it was great because I can then just hand them the memos and say, here it is. I can consolidate those pretty quickly into a deck. I can consolidate those pretty quickly into like an organizational structure, because we're all in agreement of like how we got to where we're at. And it kind of gives you I don't know. I find it gives a certain amount of confidence that I have like 20 odd memos sitting in a Google Doc somewhere that I can pull up and I can look at them. I could be like, you were an idiot. That was stupid. You were obviously going to make that mistake, but at least I can go back through those things and see what my thought process was.
Is the essence of the business a one company with employees, or is it to bring in, I'll say, freelance bookkeepers to be part of the journey? How does the structure of humans work?
One company, one world. So the way that we do, and I mean, this is kind of getting into, again, like when you go into an industry and you're trying to, I hate saying that I'm going into an industry to disrupt it, because it immediately makes you sound egotistical that they got it wrong this entire time. And me with my incredible naivety is going to come in and realize within 30 seconds that I was maybe underestimating the situation, which is a little like what's happening at Twitter. There's a sense of coming into there's a sense of coming into an incumbent market where there are sort of disruptions that can be done and there are marginal gains and there are all these sort of things. Having founders who come from that industry as well and know what the defaults are is huge. And so culture for us is really big. And the way that we do the work that we do is culturally kind of relevant within the company. We try to be very efficient. We try to cut down on a lot of the sort of standard things that happen in incumbent industries where you have large org structures and partners and all of these sort of things. We don't have that. We're very flat hierarchically, we're quite flat.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, it's about trying to give our employees an environment, or our bookkeepers, our tax specialists, et cetera, payroll people, a really great environment where they feel that they can progress and grow and learn new skills. And so I want someone to come to the company who's going to come on as a technologist, as we would call them, which is someone who's primarily learning the ropes of cloud accounting, and tell them that they could be a CPA and get that designation within sort of five years, or however quick it took them to do that. From my point of view, that would be great if they did that. And we know that in the industry as a whole, that's not typically a supported process. So there's a certain hierarchy of designations and everything else. So we're very much keeping it all within the humans sort of group, I would guess. And I think that's important to do that. I think there's stuff that you can outsource. So things like, lead generation and PR. And there's a lot of these kind of things that circle around growth business, which need people who are very, very highly motivated and well connected in their space. But in terms of it being the core part of our business, I'm a big fan of not outsourcing stuff until you get the formula.
Right. So you also mentioned about the democratization of data in your bio. Can you tell our audience what you mean by that?
I know. I was expecting that to come up. As I was writing the bio, I hate writing bios because whenever I write one, it makes me sound like, I don't know, that I kind of know what I'm talking about. Democratization of data is an interesting one. It's something which I've done in the past. So I was one of the lead product at CityMapper several years ago, and one of the big things that we did is we worked in the open data system. And so if you want to know when a bus is going to turn up, and you want to know it's going to turn up at a certain time, so that when you leave the house, you get to the bus stop in time, the bus takes you where you want to go, and then you can plan public transit, or you can plan a route, you can plan the way that you work. And that's all based on data. That's based on open data. This is data that comes from the bus manufacturer or the company, or it comes from the local government. And there's standards for that. There's standards for this open data AI and everything else that comes with it. And that's a real democratization of data. And the interesting thing that happens when you have a community which is using open data as a transit piece is that every single person in that community is basically producing data as part of their trip or journey. But it actually improves and is utilized, as long as it's utilized correctly, by the community as a whole to improve it. So people realize that there's too much demand. They create more bus routes, which is more beneficial. They realize that there's problems with sort of disability access due to transit times, so they create new disability access. Like, there's a lot of these things that transit data as a whole and government data as a whole does very well. We're not doing that kind of open data at humans. What we're doing is, in terms of how we're democratizing data, is actually allowing business owners to see the data in their own business, which is incredibly difficult to do.
Why is that?
Because if I said to you, okay, so Rivers, calculate your COGS for me, your first question is going to be, as probably as business owners, what is COGS?
Yeah.
Which is cost of goods sold. And then you're going to be like, I'm going to Google what the calculation is for that. And then you're going to have to get all of your accounts, which are probably not reconciled. You're going to have to reconcile them all, make sure they're all accurate. And then you're going to export them into a CSV, and you're going to run the calculations on it in Excel or however it is that you choose to do it. And you may opt, after about an hour or so, with a COGS figure. And then I'm going to ask you in a day's time, what's your COGS? And you're going to have to do it all over again. And so that's one figure. It doesn't include like your free cash. It doesn't include your debt to interest. It doesn't include your liability rate. It doesn't include your live payroll. It doesn't tell you how much of your employee benefits are going out. And these are numbers where you can see them spike really quickly, or you can see them crumble because of a market factor. And so what we want to do is we want to create an environment, because all the numbers happen through the ledger, it happens through the book. When you submit your receipts, and we reconcile weekly, which no one else really does, you provide us with your receipts, you upload them through the phone app, or you can post them to us or whatever, however you want to do it. We put them in. We have bookkeepers who are working on your ledger in real time, and they know your business. They create these live ledgers. These then go into the dashboard, which is unique to you. No one else can see it unless you choose to share it. And we do those calculations for you, but it's updated in real time. And you can see that trend over time, and we can give you a little bit of a prediction over the course of your last 3 months, how your next month's going to look, bearing in mind the seasonal variance. Mm-hmm. And that's a part where we want to start building, more and more powerful things on. Now, if you were in a large business and you had hired a CFO, that's their job. So they would come to you as the CEO of the business, and they'd be like, "Hey, Rivers, I'm a bit worried that our payroll is down in a spike a little bit, but look at the benefits. People aren't spending their benefits. But, look at the free cash. We're holding too much free cash. So, by the time tax time comes, we're going to have to try and move it somewhere." And they would do this because you would have a weekly finance meeting where you would be told of all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And your sales department would tell you what they're bringing in, and finance would say what's going out. And then you as a CEO would make a decision. 99% of businesses ain't that. So what you're able to do in our world is we kind of fill that CFO, COO crossover. We're not here as a financial advisor, but we're here to show you a mirror against your business and show you the facts and let you make those decisions. And one of the biggest parts in making those decisions is the knowledge gap that comes with that. And that's something that we're concentrating on sort of this year, which is we've just launched a knowledge center, an insight center. And we're trying to create articles based on and sort of insight and reports based on stuff that's relevant for small business, to navigate why a burn rate is important. How do you calculate it? What do I do with this burn rate? What does it tell me? If my lender asks me for a cash report, what do I give them? These are questions which, if you Google them, you'll have 20 different answers. And so, we're working pretty hard now to sort of really plug that knowledge gap for owners and give them a trusted resource.
And so in that regard, does your team meet with your clients on a regular basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, to offer that value-added service?
So we do weekly reconciliation, and what we do is, which as far as I'm aware, and this is where I'm sure there's someone who's incredibly sharp-eyed to the market will turn around and go, but no. We offer pretty much next day service on support. It's free for you to bother us with your questions. It's not billed like most services would. So you email us. You have an email that we give you, which is it's not unique to you, but it will get you an immediate response from your bookkeeping team. Mm-hmm. And you can ask any questions you have, how does this impact my child benefit? Well, we'll tell you within 24 hours. It's not a big deal for us to do that. That's how we built our business, to provide that level of support.
Right.
Because from our point of view, the more knowledgeable you are as an owner, the more efficient we are as a business.
Right.
So instead of support being this anchor on a business, which is typically what it is, our support actually for us is it's a mutual benefit for both the customer and for us. Everyone benefits out of that higher level of support. On some of the higher plans, depending on how complicated your business is, we offer things like, a monthly check-in with a bookkeeper where you'll sort of get half an hour to go through the reports, go through everything that's on your dashboard already. They'll explain things that you don't know. They'll give you a heads up on certain things that may be changing, that sort of stuff. It really just depends how much involvement you want from us. But the baseline for us of unlimited support, which is usually same or next business day, is kind of our key SLA promise, I would say, which is the thing that we kind of, live and die by.
Do you have you got any pushback from the traditionalists who do bookkeeping? That's have you heard any bites back from them?
No, not yet. No, not yet. I don't know. I don't go to accountancy conferences, so it's very strange because I'm not part of that world. So
Right.
I'm just trying to solve problems. I don't tend to get involved in the sort of the industry, the deep part of the industry. I'm just, I was going to say myself as a coming from a UX background, which is once things transitioned to iPhones and iPads, I moved pretty squarely away from sort of brand and sort of traditional media design into UX, which had got me into the technology space.
Right.
And it was drilled into me from day one when I moved into that space that you are the advocate for the customer. Like you defend the customer. You defend the customer against sales. You defend the customer against bad actors. You can, And so that's kind of always stuck with me that I'm defending my customers. I don't care what the industry for the most part thinks.
So what about sales? Give us a sense as to how your sales strategies work.
Sales strategies have been interesting. So we kind of acquired a bunch of clients early on who have been sort of great for us. They've been a great test bed. We had to kind of figure out quite a lot about how we were going to work. We have things called pods, which is actually kind of based on it's actually based on the Spotify model of basically creating small, effectively families that are self-sustaining, that can take on certain levels of workflow within their own teams and have what we would call ownership over what happens in that team. So we don't kind of have to directly manage them. They kind of manage themselves. They get the work done that needs to get done when they need to get it done. And they figure out what training needs to happen, what support a client needs, and all of this sort of stuff. They're with the client. They defend the client. That's their job as well. So we just try not to get in the way of those. And that makes them super efficient and obviously much happier because they have a say over what they do. But defining that model, takes that first 20, 30 clients, right? And you have to kind of like figure that out. Now we're kind of getting into this next phase, which is, okay, so we've kind of figured it out and we know that it's not going to break. And we kind of know what our trajectory is going to be. And we've kind of put enough planning in place whereby we've built the big snowball and we've managed to lift it to the top of the hill. You don't want to make sure your snowball's too big. So you don't want to invest too much effort into that because, as soon as it rolls, it's going to go in the wrong direction. But at least you can get some momentum on it. That's a fine art. And that's an art where, incredibly grateful that I'm working with someone like Bill Murphy, who knows exactly the size of that snowball. But at that stage, then you kind of moving into kind of a growth environment. So it was good for us, I guess, in that first year to try and really determine, anyone can say that they have PMF, product market fit. Actually working out what the product market fit looks like is a little bit more hard, and a lot of people don't really think about that. And so being able to say, well, okay, like we think we have that now, let's now double down and push. And so we recently hired we kind of took a bit of a risk, I guess. A lot of companies at this phase wouldn't necessarily double down and bring in a senior sales leader. That's not the typical way that you would do it. You would kind of bring in someone who was just there to sell on the phone. But, this industry demands talents that are very different. This is quite a jaded industry of business owners who sometimes feel like, and we even said on the website, and I stand by that copy still, that running a small business is one of the loneliest, hardest things you can do. And I've started quite a few businesses. I'm still in awe of anyone who does, because I think like there's kind of like this cross bit of like heroism and like stupidity that comes when you start a business, and there has to be this kind of like this other vector of like naivety that allows you to get through it. Or if you've run a successful business or even a business before, just not the naivety but the forgetfulness of what pain is. But we kind of know who these people are, and we know that the small business market, whether it's Google Mail selling you more Google space or whatever, it's incredibly predatory. Everyone's after $5 a month, and everyone's trying to get you to sign up. And like as soon as I created the humans domain, I was getting emails to my Gmail asking me, do I want to offshore stuff? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do this? This is only $5 a month. This is $20 a month. Right. Everyone's trying to get you the price of Netflix, right, per month for whatever service or thing that you want to do. Our research was showing that there's like, at least at least sort of 3,000 apps that are purely based around that specific area of the SMB market that are all charging this amount of money with a free trial, and then it continues on, no credit card required. And so I think most small businesses are just, and owners are overwhelmed, but they're also jaded, quite rightly, by a lot of people who claim they have solutions to their problems.
Right.
And so that's why we never decided to take that hard sell approach. For us, it's more about setting up the stall well. And certainly in the Maritimes, it's a different beast because it's more of a word of mouth in the Maritimes.
Yeah, it is.
People's level of trust is orientated far more towards what their friend has done. And I can't go out and just sort of like buy a huge amount of Google ads and just say, hey, come sign up to my thing, because everyone's going to be like, well, I don't know. I have to kick the tires a bit.
Is that strange for you to work in an environment like that?
I'm originally from the north of England, where it's like that, and so I'm up by the border. I was born up by the Borders, which is small city, and sort of a lot of the same. Put it this way, I understand you. I understand you from this, which a lot of people don't. That's just because of my background, but there's a real sense of like trust within the community, and it kind of says quite a lot. Like if you say that you're a Maritimes founded business, that actually means quite a bit. And it's amazing how many people have asked me sort of like, where are the founders from? And I'm like, well, Bill's from Cape Breton. Oh, he's a Cape Bretoner. Okay, right. And that always kind of that always kind of surprised me. But that's also one of the things I love about the Atlantic as well. So it's people are very very supportive of small business, and I think that's especially in the Maritimes businesses. I've kind of always joked that if you opened a business in Halifax or Dartmouth, then there would be a queue around the block probably for the first 2 weeks while everyone checked out your wares, right?
Yeah.
People are very supportive and very loyal, and that's something which you don't get every day. I couldn't launch a company in Toronto and get that sort of response, right? Yeah.
So what brought you to Nova Scotia?
Wow, a combination of things. I'll say primarily my wife.
Yeah.
So I've been coming here for quite a long time, primarily because we have family here. And I've just been working in the last sort of one of the last jobs I did before I moved here. I was kind of split between LA and London, which is really not the best time zone blend.
No.
And I sort of got to the stage in my career where I was kind of like VP layer and sort of Series CD companies. And if anyone watching this has ever done that kind of role, then that you're probably getting flashbacks of panic hitting you in the face with the sound of Slack and everything else. So it was just something to sort of like the need to make a life change. And of course, my wife and myself had sort of recently found out that we were also pregnant around that time. So it was a really good opportunity to sort of really make a big life change. And I already had a lot of love for the Maritimes anyway at that point. So it was very easy for us to kind of fit into this environment. It reminded me of, my time growing up in Newcastle and in the north of England. It was, the Maritimes is a very special space,
Yeah, it is a special space. Well, Rob, this has been a very cool journey. Learning about humans. Is there anything you'd like to leave with us? I'm going to ask you, how do we get in touch with you? How do we get in touch with humans.com? It's just really HUUMANS.com.
As Bill put in a very corny way, we put the U in humans, which I think we should never have that as a branding statement. It's terrible. But it's HUUMANS.com, humans.com. Or you can just Google humans bookkeeping, however you want to spell humans, and we'll know that show up. So we're not just the Maritimes, we're nationwide. And we offer payroll plans as well. So if you're only after payroll, and we also have, for those people who have got a new business or a startup, we have 50% off in the first year, 25% off the second. There's a startup plan program. So if you need a business, have a look at that, and come on over and sign up, and we'll get someone on the phone with you to have a chat.
And it's Rob, Boynes. If you want to check him out you're on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Yeah,
I am on LinkedIn.
I thought so.
Yeah. The bane of the business owner's existence. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, Rob, thanks so much for your time today and coming to do us to chat about humans and the great things you're doing, and all from Nova Scotia, which is, of course, a key part of the Atlantic Canadian ecosystem. So thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Rivers. Appreciate it.